Welcome back for another amazing conversation. I know you're going to love this. I'm with Matt Sevey. He is an engineering manager. He's got an incredible background, and he's a client of mine right now. So he may be able to reveal more of the inside story about Zach White and Owaco. But I'm just pumped for where we can go today. Matt, thanks for making time to share who you are with me and the amazing engineering leaders who are out there listening.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Happy to be here.
So I'll confess really quick for everybody, I mispronounced Matt's name, and we had to do 2 takes of this intro. You would think I couldn't make that mistake, but here we go. Matt, I want to start at a really cool place. There's a point that you described before we started recording today in your career where there was a shift in your mindset that has shaped who you are and where you're going. Can you just take us back a little bit of your story and what led up to that moment and describe that shift for us?
My journey into engineering is probably very relatable. Started out as a Taekwondo instructor and then a ballet dancer and then found engineering. It's a very, very common path. No, so I think growing up, I did a lot of outside things, very big into the outdoors with my family, had done karate for a number of years, got into ballet dancing in high school. And when I had then gone to college, I kind of picked engineering because my guidance counselor told me I was good at math and sciences and kind of gave me a pamphlet of like, here's engineering. I was like, seems interesting. Went to like a summer camp, got a scholarship from that. So just chose engineering, made sense. And I went to a college that was near my hometown. So I could keep doing those things that I'd always been doing in terms of teaching karate and dancing ballet and all the kind of like outdoor recreation that I did. So, your program kind of like lifestyle engineering, like I had the lifestyle like down pat. It was like kind of doing my lifestyle and then like started doing this engineering thing.
This is so interesting. So hold on. I think most people, myself included, assumed you were totally joking at the beginning of this when you said Taekwondo and ballet and like, okay, haha, but you're serious. And
oh yeah,
and you're unique in the sense a lot of us have the story of, hey, you're good at math and science, you should be an engineer. A lot of us have that. But most of us who heard that were not also doing those things. So really interesting that you had both. I'm curious, like, why did your guidance counselor not say, hey, Matt, you seem to love physical movement of the body and dance and martial arts, like go pursue muscle science or so? Like, how did that part get ignored in the recommendation to go pursue engineering? Or like, tell me what was happening in that like what was going on there?
I think one, I didn't have a great relationship with the guidance counselor. Like wasn't someone that I think had a super holistic view of who I was. And I think similar to what I would call, work-life balance now, had kind of like school life balance back then in terms of like all of those extracurriculars were like very different from school. So like in school, there wasn't a dance team or a karate club or things like that. And so I think my school repertoire or kind of like my resume as this student didn't show those things. And I think the stuff that I was involved with, I was in the band, I did like student council, class council, like those types of things, but like didn't do that in a way that would have stood out to be like, oh, Matt should go to like pursue like music ed or something.
So you really were living into this lifestyle engineering concept at a very young age. Mm-hmm. And so were you excited about becoming an engineer, or was it something that you had resistance to because you really thought you wanted to pursue dance or martial arts or something else?
My viewpoint towards schooling and kind of education was when I looked at the engineering portfolio of like different types of engineering. I had chose mechanical engineering, I think largely one because I'd always like liked using my hands. Like that was a little bit of like a link towards my karate or dance, like kind of like doing things like, physically. But also my guidance counselor had kind of made a point about like, because I was looking at computer engineering or mechanical engineering, and for those that know my current work history, computer engineering probably would have been the smart choice. But there was like something that they said around technology is moving so fast. Like if you do computer engineering, like you're going to always have to be like staying up to date on the latest like technology trends. where like mechanical engineering, like older, kind of like set in stone in terms of like the foundation of it. And so I was like, oh, sweet, I can just like get my mechanical engineering degree and then be done with school and done with learning. Like, I'm done. And I think came from that separation of school to school. It's something that I do, like I do very well at it, but there was nothing that was linking what I was learning in school to what I did in life, or like what I was doing in my life, for example. And so I think that was a key point there, which then led to some of my career changes later on.
Yeah. So we teed this up by saying there was a major shift for you. Keep us going in the story then. What happened next?
I had that scholarship, which prompted me to apply to the school nearby, which then prompted I needed an internship, which I then got, and that internship turned into a job. And then all of a sudden I didn't have time for karate or dance or any of those things. Now I'm working full time. And I think it took a few years for that to catch up with me in terms of kind of work being now like the larger part of my life. So early on, it's like right out of college, the first year out of college is like graduated, new adult, freedom, like working, like this is great, right? So there's that kind of like life excitement from that standpoint. And then that next year was when I got engaged. And so now we're thinking about like getting married, and my wife was going to be going back to grad school, which involved a move. And so there's all these other changes. And so then a couple years later was when it really started hitting me in terms of she was in grad school pursuing what she wanted to be doing. And I was just kind of working, and finally was faced with the decision of like, okay, what does your career look like? You don't have these life things happening that are kind of driving your life. You're just kind of like in it. So like, what does that look like? And that was when I kind of realized that like what I was doing was not interesting.
Wow.
And so also I did mechanical engineering in undergrad, but I never was a mechanical engineer. Like I went into manufacturing and like team management and project management. So I never even like did true engineering. It was always just like the problem solving that engineering gives you.
Yes.
And I think that was then spun into me thinking like, well, what do I like doing? What am I interested in? Like I went into mechanical engineering because I like to use my hands, but I've never really used my hands for mechanical engineering. Like there was, and I think that was the piece in terms of I never found that thing that allowed me to link what I was learning in mechanical engineering to like life. Unlike some of my classmates that were in like the ASME Formula One car group on campus, they were taking their classes and then going and building a suspension system for this car on like after class and like on the weekends. Or another group of kids that I did a lot of my homework with, like their senior capstone was like making a rocket. And like now they all work at like an aerospace company. Like they found that link between what they were learning in their mechanical engineering classes and how to apply that to a real world job and like a real world problem. And I think that was something that I think because I was so focused on the life side of things early on, I never spent the time to figure out how to make that connection for myself. So then,
this is a really huge point. Just to sit on that for a moment. I've seen so many young engineering professionals out of school, getting that first job, who are suffering because of missing that link that you just described. It never happened in college, and they have all the education, but not any real connection to why everything I just learned matters in life in a way that I can get personally lit up about, get excited about. And when was the point that you actually recognized that that's what was missing? It's easy to maybe reflect back on and say, oh, if only that had happened, it would have been great. But where in the actual experience did Matt come into awareness? I know all the stuff in my head, but none of this is connecting for me in life doing the work.
So what I started to learn and like teach myself software engineering and kind of web development, and like I came at it from the approach of like, how do I immediately start using this in real life? And so like, how do I build a website and then see the website? Cool. And then kind of like starting there and then working backwards to like, okay, like how does a programming language work? What is binary? What are all these data types and things like that? And so then to be able to see that link between the really the computer engineering side of things and the computer science side of things, and then what you can actually build and how do you apply that. I think once I started doing that and seeing that and really enjoying that was when I realized that that was what I was missing previously. It wasn't that I recognized that and then made a choice. It was like I just like started doing this new thing and then like it clicked with me. Then that was kind of like why I did that.
What was it that first pushed you to want to learn how to build a website and actually get back into that computer engineering? I mean, okay, for the computer engineers, my apologies. I'm not saying building a website is computer engineering, but you get my point. Like, where did that actually come back to life for you? What prompted that?
So I went to school in Maine, and that was where I met my wife, got my first job. And when she went back to school, it was in the Boston area. And so we'd moved down to Boston, just got exposed to the tech scene, had people that were software developers, were web developers, saw what they were working on. Also had like knew some friends that were very entrepreneurial in terms of like trying to like start their own business, start their own apps, and like seeing like some of them had done that in terms of like they went to school for like business or economics and now we're software developers. And so I think I had was exposed to that as an option, and then talking to a friend being like, wouldn't this be a cool thing to build? And then we're like, neither of us had ever written a single line of code. So we're like, I don't know, like, let's like take a class and like, just like use that as like a fun way to learn this thing. When I first started learning it, it was more just from a standpoint of like testing something new, like fun thing to work with a friend. I didn't even like necessarily consider it at that point as a career change. And it wasn't until like 2.5 years later that I kind of like got to the point where I could probably be doing this instead of the job that I'm doing and have a lot more fun.
Wow. So then let's get to that point. Here you're on a self-discovery, self-learning journey, tapping back into that part of you that almost went into computer engineering in the first place, and really discovering your interest for it, your capability is growing. Eventually there's this moment where you're like, okay, I could do this. What's happening right there? Take us into the thought process and the decision and how your mindset changed at that time.
At that point, I'd been taking online classes, building little side projects and apps and things, and enjoying it, learning more. And it was getting to the point where I was spending 10, 15, 20 hours a week doing this outside of my job.
Wow.
And it was taking a second and reflecting. It's like I'm spending this much time doing it just like for fun, and I'm enjoying learning again. And I think that was like something too that was it's a switch for me, and ironic when I think back to like how I was thinking as a high schooler with my guidance counselor saying like you're always going to need to be learning. And I think that switch in terms of like I am unmotivated at work to learn new concepts to get better at what I'm doing, whereas this I am extremely motivated to be learning new things in order to get better. And I think that was kind of the switch for me in terms of at work, I'm like turning down promotions because I don't want to do that type of work. And like here, I'm investing just as much time outside trying to learn these skills. So like, how do I switch this? Like, how do I start doing what I'm doing outside of work as my job? And like, make this a thing because so many people before me had already done it.
Yeah. So tell us what you did.
So I went through a web development boot camp that was, still very popular, and at the time was a very popular way to like transition. And I think I have an interesting perspective I think on the value of web development boot camps. And I think for a lot of people, it's not worth it. I think actually in a lot of the way it's marketed, it's not worth it. I spent 2.5 years going through courses, building things, doing this self-development stuff, like at my own pace and kind of figuring it out. And then when I approached a web development bootcamp, I purposely looked for the one that emphasized the career growth side of things the most, because they're all a very short time frame, 2 months, 3 months, highly intensive. I also found one that I could do part-time, so I didn't have to quit my job and like have that additional stress of like now I'm, all the way in type of thing. Cause like I only have a finite amount of time and I can't do everything. So I want to not have to worry about learning anything technical during this process so that I can focus exclusively on defining what my career is. Because if I'm going to take this time and do this investment, I want to make sure I find a job that I love. I don't want to just switch and find the software version of what I'm doing right now. I think a lot of the people that I went through that program with, the ones that came in with like nothing and were kind of expecting that experience that web development boot camps kind of like advertise in terms of 3 months, 0 to full stack developer, like they were disappointed, because that's just like not the case, and I think, and if you talk to anyone that has like hired someone out of one of those boot camps, it's like you hire the people that have like shown a history of learning, and the ones that are successful are the ones that keep learning and like understand that like this is just like a finite like kickstart or like accelerator to what I'm learning.
So here you are, you've done the boot camp and you're making a total shift in your career trajectory at this moment. And we know the end of the story, right? Where you're at now and the success you've had, and we can talk about that a little bit. But during that transition, like, tell us what was going on for you. I mean, was that a simple thing? Was it really scary? Just take us into that whole world. A lot of people talk about this or dream about doing this and don't do it because it's like, who knows what may happen if I walk away from my degree and all this experience and the big paycheck and whatever. So how was that experience for you, and saying, I'm going to stop doing mechanical engineering, which I was barely doing in the first place, and go into this whole other path?
I fortunately had a very supportive wife at the time, so that made things all huge. much easier. She was going through had just finished grad school at that point, and so that was another kind of reason for doing it part-time, to kind of not have that stressor and like pressure of like, I gotta, I'm on a time clock, like I got this much in savings, and like, if what happens when I hit the end of it. And so I think approaching it from the standpoint of like, what do I know I'm going to stress about and then make me less effective, and how do I mitigate that? And so obviously having the support of my wife and having, doing it in a part-time way allowed me to mitigate those two stressors, to then allow it to be the kind of exciting experience that it was. And I think also the bit I mentioned about having clear expectations about what my goals of that time were, like I didn't then have the additional stressor of the technical piece. Like the stuff that we kind of went over in class was more of like a refresher of stuff that I had already done, which was great. Like I learned some things here and there because of questions that other people asked that I never would have thought to ask, which was great. And like that definitely learned some things there. But like the stress that other people had about like, I'm still trying to figure out like what this thing called coding is, that was also kind of removed. So it's kind of like managing what are all the things to kind of like manage to then allow me to focus on like what was important to me, which was that career side of things. And so that allowed me to kind of basically spend the 3 months or so just doing, I think like 30 or 40 informational interviews with past alumni and like people in the space, just hardcore networking in terms of like reaching out and just talking to them about their experience, and just trying to spend that time trying to articulate what it was that I liked to do, and like what it was that I enjoyed about coding, what that might mean for a job or a type of company or kind of different products and things like that. And so being able to have that time, just like no expectation of like trying to get a job at that point, just like I am just again trying to like refine what my goal is here in terms of like what is that job that I'm looking for.
Yes, I love the phrase informational interviews, hardcore networking, and you're kind of laying out a blueprint, like how do you make these kind of major career transitions from one discipline to another, and how it worked for you. But was that an easy thing for you to do, Matt? Or was that informational interviewing and hardcore networking like really scary and totally new for you as an engineer? Like where did you land on that spectrum?
It was definitely a new thing for sure. That was actually a piece of the program that I had seen that I really knew was going to be valuable to me. So they really pushed reach out to our alumni network. They did this. They know to expect it. Like people are going to reach out, just like asking, they called them coffee chats. Like, hey, let me buy you a coffee, pick your brain about your experience and just learn how to do that. So like lots of coffees, lots of beers, lots of, yeah.
So can you I mean, just walk us through the mechanics. We're engineers, we're how things are done kinds of people. So what is an informational interview or a coffee chat? What does it look like? How do you set it up? Like, what is that conversation? Just kind of tell us a couple of the mechanics, because I think it's a really useful reminder that we all can be doing this with the network we have and expanding our network. How does Matt do a coffee chat?
So I had kind of a template outreach kind of message that I would send to people that basically was like, hey, I saw this in your background. So whether it's like, hey, you're a startup alumni, or like, hey, I saw that you're working at this company, show that you know who they are. And then just kind of lay out, like, I'd love to talk to you about your experience. Like, I'm currently learning to code, going through this program. I'd love to hear your experience, love to kind of get your thoughts on, XYZ. Can we meet up for coffee or Zoom or,
Sure.
whatever, setting in the framework that like, I'm just interested in talking to you. Like, I've got no other alternative motive besides just like hearing your experience. And like, for the most part, people love talking about themselves.
Yep.
and so
Matt,
it's
is
an
this
easy ask.
Is this a LinkedIn message, or how are you connecting with people?
Yeah, I did the majority of it through LinkedIn. And I think that's a useful skill, I think, for anyone in their professional career. I think like LinkedIn is definitely a network that has grown a lot in the recent years in terms of being more active. 7-8 years ago, it was more of like, here's my online resume. And that now it's much more of a tool and like an ecosystem that people engage with and communicate through. So that is my preferred method at the moment.
Sure. And so then here you are, whether it's in real life for coffee or over Zoom or a phone call, and you sit down with this total stranger. What do you say?
The first question is usually just like, tell me about how you got here. And I think there was, especially like the people that I was talking to a lot of alumni of this program. And so they had a similar story to me. Like, they were doing something else and then like went through this program and learned how to code, and like, what did they get out of it? What were their challenges trying to find a job? Like, how did that look for them? Like, what were some of the questions that they asked? And then, asking through that process, too, like, in retrospect, what would you have done differently, or what would you have done more of? And a very common answer was I would have done more of these.
Yeah.
And so that was encouraging then to be like, yeah, people see the value of these, and I think they're happy to be a part of that and encourage people to do them as well.
So Matt, you're in my coaching program right now as we're recording this. And one of the themes is about getting out of our comfort zone. And I can't tell you how many people I've coached who something as simple as this coffee chat concept is really uncomfortable. Sending a cold message on LinkedIn to a total stranger, people are really concerned about how they're going to respond. If they do say yes to that Zoom or real life coffee chat, then there's a lot of anxiety about when we get on the call, like, what am I supposed to say? And people get very concerned about it. Emotionally, for you, can you describe maybe the difference between the first time you did it and how you feel about it now?
So the first one was actually an acquaintance of someone that I was going through the program with. She's like, oh, you should talk to this person, like message them, and like, they can meet you like tomorrow. And I was like, what?
I'm not ready.
So like that one, I was definitely like, oh, where should I meet them? Should I meet them here? Like, I got to find the right place. And it was just like totally overwhelming. And I don't even remember what we talked about. I think then it was done. Like, then I had done it, and then it was, I think the same kind of idea of this, like podcasts, like, you have a general framework of like what to talk about, but like, you don't know where it's going to go. Like, you don't know kind of like what avenues you're going to go down. I think that's something that helps me towards the end in terms of like, these are like the 3 questions I'm going to ask them, and then I'm just going to see how the conversation evolves, and having less and less and less expectations of like how it's going to happen, I think also helps. Just make, me more relaxed, and that's the other person more relaxed. Like, if I'm coming at them with like 20 million questions in like 30 minutes, and it's like, whoa, like, am I getting interviewed? Is this like, so, yeah, I think just with anything, the more you do it, it just gets easier and easier. And I think also it helps you then start to see like what you're getting out of it and like what you might want to change to be able to like get the answers you're looking for. And I think something to like having something kind of consistent throughout. So whether it's I'm always going to ask these 3 questions, or I'm always going to try and like basically give like my elevator pitch, like this is me, this is what I want, this is what I'm doing, and then see how that evolves over the course of time and see how that changes based on the feedback I get in those interviews and how my assumptions are challenged in terms of, I think this type of engineering is for me, or this type of engineering is for me, or this type of company. I don't think I'd ever want to work for that type of company because I think what they're doing is weird. And then someone's like, well, actually, it's a lot of this work. I'm like, oh, that actually sounds super cool.
Yeah, totally. So Matt, you've been, helping other people through these same kinds of transitions as you've laid out your own story going from mechanical into software and coding. And tell me, if you were going to look back and say, if there was one thing for Matt that you would do differently to either accelerate the outcome or get, more value from that transition and the journey you took, what would it be?
I think early on, I would have reached out to my network more. So I think before I went into the boot camp, I think by the time I went to the boot camp, I had spent enough time and had mentally, I was ready that I think I did a pretty good job taking full advantage of that time. But I think the time kind of when I took my first online course and built my first website, starting the boot camp, I think that is where there was opportunity to kind of accelerate that and get more value out of that. Who knows, maybe I could have done the transition without that boot camp entirely if I had used my network more. And I think that is probably where, for me, I've noticed I am much more comfortable engaging and questioning and reaching out to total strangers than my close network. I have 2 pretty close friends that have also did kind of some sort of self-coaching into their career, and I think I might have talked to each one of them once.
Wow.
That was it. And I think that was from a place of fear in terms of they're already this thing, and if I'm going to come to them with questions or this thing, I need to be ready. I need to be ready for that. And I think that was definitely a limiting belief for me that I think delayed kind of that whole timeline for me. So
this point resonates for me so deeply, Matt, because the same could be said for my journey into leaving my career and starting my current business and the work I do in private equity and all these things. I was waiting for a long time to be ready. And the people close to you are often the ones that we go to last for whatever reason. That psychology of I don't want to ask for favors from those people, or I don't want to be seen as fill in the blank. And we sit around and wait for everything else to fall into line before we take any action at all. So I'm encouraged by this because you're basically saying, look, start where you're at with what you've got and begin taking action right now. That is such a simple thing to say and a hard thing to do. Fast forward for us to today. So you made this transition, completely shifted in your not only career trajectory, but also the role that it played in your life and how you connected. Those dots that weren't connected in college are starting to connect for you now. So tell us about where you're at today and how this has changed your vision for the future.
So I think I am now in a place that's kind of the proportions have shifted in terms of where my focus has been. I think I started out from a place of lifestyle engineering in terms of the kind of extracurriculars were my focus, and that's where I spent a lot of my time, and school and my career was something that I just kind of fit in, and it was great and it was fine. And I think doing this career change got me into a career that I'm much more passionate about, and then it has additionally taken up more of my life.
Sure.
So I think that has then brought me to you in terms of I think I'm now how do I balance it was easy to balance before because I just wasn't as passionate about my career. But now I am very passionate about my career, and like so much so that I'm also starting, this coaching business to like help people do what I did, because like I get energized every time I think about it. I love working with people and seeing them make that change and seeing them take control of their forward trajectory. And like, that's super exciting. And that's only going to take up more of my time. And so
Yeah.
also struggling with then looking back, and as happy as I am about the choices I've made and kind of where I am now, also realizing that it came at the cost of not doing those other things as much as I hope I would have. And so trying to find, okay, how do we rebalance things so that I can feel better spread out across all of my interests and all of my priorities, and still feel like I am progressing in all of those at a rate that I am content with.
So this is really awesome, because not a lot of people that I have coached or met have experienced deeply both sides of the coin. One side being, I'm very passionate about my extracurriculars, my hobbies, something outside of my career, and I'm working for the weekend. Like, I just can't wait to go do the thing that I love to do that's not work. And I work to live. You hear that a lot, don't live to work, work to live. And there's those types of people. And then there's the people I meet who are just right in the zone of their genius and passion with their career and their work. And they work all the time and they love it and they know exactly what that's all about, but they really don't have any connection deeply to recreation or hobbies or interests outside the office. And even though they love their work, sometimes it consumes them, or they still burn out because they're one-dimensional in that way. And I see burnout on both sides of this, and it has pros and cons on both sides of this. And you've now experienced both sides. What would you say then in the idea of balance? It's such a important word, but also I'll say poorly defined, or everybody has their own understanding of what balance looks like. So what would you say you've learned from being on both sides about the idea of balance, at least as how it's important to you?
One of my early on managers in my first career said something similar along the lines of, you always have work-life balance. Working 90% of the time and sleeping 10% of the time is still 100% of your time. It's still balanced. I think that is definitely, for better or for worse, resonated from the standpoint of I probably work more now than I did in my previous role, but it doesn't feel as taxing, or the days don't feel as long because I'm more energized about it. For me, we talk about this in our sessions, like kind of, more focusing on energy management instead of time management. I think
Yes.
I think I had a better balance previously because I wasn't putting a ton of energy into my work. I had all this energy for my, my other passions. And so it was fine. But now I'm putting a lot more energy into my work because I'm excited about it. And I still want to put as much energy into my outside passion. So then that's kind of where I'm feeling off balance, because I don't have enough energy to put into all of them. And being forced to make those choices about where to allocate energy on different things. And I think for me, that's kind of where the work-life balance idea resonates.
Yeah.
And the challenge of the energy that I have in a day, do I feel like I have enough to do everything that I want to do?
Hard topic. I love the connection to energy, and this idea that a trigger of imbalance in our lives is when I don't have energy left in the tank for the things I want to do, the things I want to put it into. And that creates for us that emotion of imbalance. And so, Matt, you're on a really exciting journey, both in building and scaling your career and your company, and also taking your experience and coaching and supporting others who want to do what you've done. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there with My Code Career, and just how you're helping people who want to go through the same kind of transitions or build careers like what you're doing.
Absolutely. So I have kind of two sides of what I'm doing with my code career. I think the initial passion and kind of the main focus for me is providing an alternative for kind of people like me, like that pathway to learning how to code without going through these traditional web development boot camps that might not fit into their lives, might not be the right kind of allocation of energy in terms of how time intensive it is, how disruptive it can be, both financially and from like a career standpoint, to like be forced to, if you can't find a part-time option, quitting your job and then having this additional stress of not having your job. And so one of the core principles around software engineering is this idea of open source software that's free to everyone and kind of sharing knowledge. And I think software is an industry that really lives by that, in terms of like all the information you need to know is out there and free to use, and like in it, or very cheaply to access. And I think a missing piece to that is kind of like, what people get from going through school or going through a boot camp is that basically that syllabus, like, what is it that I really need to know in order to make this change? That's definitely something that I was missing, in terms of like, I knew a bunch of things, but I didn't know if that was enough. I didn't know if I was learning this, do I need to like spend another 6 months learning this thing, or do I just need to spend a week brushing up on this and then I'm ready to go? And I think that is an area that I see a lot of opportunities, and I'm super excited to work with people on that. They are good at kind of self-regulating, like self-directed learning. They just need that kind of syllabus and that goalpost of like, where are you on your journey?
I love that. What I tell everybody who comes to me for guidance or mentorship around business and wants to do something similar to, what I'm doing here at Owaco, is that nobody will pay you for information, because information is free, to your point. But I will gladly pay a lot of money for brilliant organization and curation of that. Because if it's up to me to go figure out, of all the world's information, which pieces do I need to know, I'm in trouble. And so I love that, Matt, you're providing that really valuable piece for the engineer or the person who wants to be in coding as an engineer. Maybe they come from a totally different background, but of all the world's information, you've organized it for that. Hey, here's where to begin. Here's how to get started. So I always finish in the same place, Matt, and I'm excited about your perspective on this then. For that engineering leader who's listening, and maybe they're ready for a transition, that they want to start leaning into work that connects to their life more and feel the passion more and the fulfillment of that life. Great questions lead, answers follow. So what question would you lead them with today to get started on that journey?
People can probably guess or surmise what my question is going to be, which is, are you doing the right type of engineering? And for me, that was literally like mechanical versus software. But I think it can also apply to, are you doing engineering on the right thing? Someone might be absolutely in love with mechanical engineering or chemical engineering, but they're just doing it for the wrong product, the wrong mission, the wrong team. And I think there's trying to ask yourself, like, am I doing the right thing? Do I love what I do and I'm just like, the environment's wrong? Do I love what I do, but I wish I just was doing it on something different? Or like, do I just wish I was just doing something totally different?
I love that. Am I in and doing the right type of engineering? A really important question. I love it. Matt, if someone wants to connect with you, explore what you're doing with My Code Career and your coaching, and just maybe practice that coffee chat that you talked about earlier, where's the best place for people to connect with you and find out more?
Best place would be LinkedIn, and you can find me /Sevey, my last name. I managed to snag that up early on.
Awesome. Well, I will absolutely put links to Matt's profile and ways to connect with him in our show notes, where you all always know to find information. I absolutely recommend, if any part of Matt's story resonates for you, if you want to make these kind of transitions, or maybe you're in coding today or in this space, but you feel plateaued, you feel like you're just not growing anymore. I can tell you just by watching what Matt is doing and in coaching him now, he is not plateaued. This guy is growing fast. He's doing incredible things, and he can help you to get those same outcomes. So please connect with Matt, if for no other reason than to practice those cold call outreaches to help build your network and build your career. So Matt, I appreciate you just being honest with us, sharing your story and where you're at. And you have a ton of success coming beyond this, I know, and I can't wait to see it unfold. But thanks again for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast.